Hey, we got another special guest on the podcast today. His name is Rob Wong. You can find him on Instagram at robwongcollects. And what drew me to his page initially was his conversations about collecting series he's been doing with current MLB stars like Bobby Witt Jr. and Eric Swanson, to name a couple. And we'll get into that in just a bit. But Rob's also a journalist covering sports in Toronto, and he is a collector himself, which is perfect because we know there's a lot of overlap between sports and sports cards. So without further ado, Rob, welcome to the pod.
Yeah, thanks, Clark. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great to have you. All right, I usually like to start here with your hobby journey. I'm curious to hear when you first started collecting. What did you collect back then, and how's that changed? What do you collect now?
Yeah, I feel like with everyone, it's evolved over the years. My first memory of collecting, a family member of mine got me like a gigantic garbage bag full of Pro Set and Score hockey from the early to mid 90s. So
Yeah.
people in Canada that are hockey card collectors definitely know what I'm talking about. And
Yep.
yeah, I just ripped open like hundreds of these packs and put them into my binder. And then over time, it was like, okay, I was getting more cards, buying packs of Upper Deck or buying packs of Donruss baseball. Like it kind of just kept going. So it's all, junk wax era. But I think for a lot of people, our age, that's how we got into it, by collecting those things. And that's how I learned about sports. I mean, thinking back to the days where you actually had to read the back of a
Yeah.
sports card to find out the stats of players or,
Yeah.
find out random information about these guys. Like that's how I became a big time sports fan. So that's
Mm.
how it began, and then it sort of evolved into trying to collect more, I guess, not rare stuff, but it was more getting into chasing bigger hits. And I
Sure.
started to really get into sports cards, I would say around 2003.
Mm.
I think I vividly remember like LeBron James rookie year.
Yeah.
I chased a lot of his rookie cards and tried to get a lot of LeBron, but I didn't do it the way that I currently collect, where I buy a lot of singles. It was more of trying to, rip a lot of wax and thinking
Right.
like, oh, this is how I have to do it. Because back then, I mean, eBay, wasn't really a thing. It was, but it's not the way it is now.
Yeah.
I didn't really go to a ton of card shows, and even my local, card stores, they didn't always have, what I was looking for. So it was really
Mm.
difficult to try to get certain things. But from about 2003 to about 2008, I opened just so much wax back in the day and
Yeah.
really built my collection. Then I took some time off and I came back to it around, I think like a lot of people listening to this podcast around, 2019, 2020, during the pandemic. So
Right.
I've been back into it pretty much since then. Ebbs and flows, depending on, how I'm feeling for that day or for that month. Maybe I'm looking at some acquisitions, but,
Mhm.
for the most part, I've definitely scaled back my wax opening. I really don't open any boxes, if at all, these days. I've gotten
Wow.
a lot smarter than that. Not that I have any issues with
Right.
people that want to do that thing, but
Sure.
yeah, that's kind of where we're at with regards to my hobby journey.
Nice. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. We've interviewed several guests now, and very similar in terms of timeline. We started collecting as kids, and then a lot of us came back right before or during the pandemic. But you have that little 2003 to 2008 piece that not a lot of people have. So I'm wondering if did you get any hits even back then that you still have? Because there were some monster rookies during
Yeah,
that
I
era.
mean, like I said before, I was trying to chase a lot of LeBron, and the only LeBron card I ever pulled, and it was the greatest pack pull I've ever had.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, I don't have that card anymore. I traded it away. But for people that remember this product, it was a very under the radar product, I guess you could call that, because LeBron, I guess, hadn't gotten drafted or was about to get drafted by the Cavaliers, and that was Upper Deck Top Prospects, which
Okay.
was a
Yeah.
product where LeBron is in like his high school jersey. You can also get like Kobe stuff from his Lower
Wow.
Marion days. There's like Michael Jordan, North Carolina stuff. But I pulled a LeBron auto
Oh
from a
wow.
pack from my local LCS. So that was the greatest pull that I've ever had in a
Yeah.
box of cards. Back then, you could get that box for like, it was either like 200 or under $200 Canadian, which
Sure.
seems insane to think nowadays that you could get a LeBron, rookie auto, even if it's not, him in his Cavaliers uniform.
Yeah.
But that's, what I was kind of looking for back then. So you know, there were some other sort of singles that I picked up along the way in those years. You know, a bunch of hockey cards. I remember, you know, Patrick Kane, Future Watch auto. You know,
Nice.
Jonathan Taves, Carey Price, like those kind of years, I was really into it.
Yeah.
Not so much in baseball, which is weird because baseball is my favorite sport, and I do have a lot of baseball cards, but I wasn't as into it back then, I would say, as opposed to hockey and
Sure.
basketball. But you know, those are definitely some cards that stand out as far as, you know, big hits from those times.
Yeah, great cards. I wonder how much that LeBron's going for. It's got to be worth, you know, quite a bit
Yeah,
because it's a LeBron
yeah,
auto. Yeah.
absolutely. And well, now that I think about it even more, I was chasing a lot of Crosby and Ovechkin
Sure.
back then as well. And as far as, you know, opening boxes, I wasn't really successful with a lot of Sidney Crosby, but you know, I would say in that early, maybe around that time, so like 05, 06,
Hmm.
07, like eBay was becoming a thing.
Right.
And I did purchase a bunch of, you know, Crosby rookies from back in the day. And unfortunately, I don't have those either. I moved them out within the
Yeah.
last couple of years, which is totally fine. But,
Yeah.
um, you know, as we talk about the hobby journey, like that was a different me. So
Right.
not so much anymore. It's cards that I you know, definitely think about and wish I still had in certain sense, but I'm totally cool with it.
Nice. Nice. All right. So, like I mentioned in your intro, I saw a video from your conversations about collecting series, specifically your interview with Bobby Witt Jr. talking about cards, which I thought was really cool. So, two-part question. First, what do you think generally about professional athletes getting into the hobby now? I think we're beginning to see more and more of that. And second, your thoughts. I don't know if you heard about this, but collectors are starting to trade one-of-one cards with some of these players that do collect, you know, and having these like pretty much this ultimate fan experience. You get to meet them one-on-one. Guys like Bobby Witt again, Evan Carter, MJ Melendez recently. Yeah. So, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's awesome that they're getting into cards and making it more publicly known. One, it's great for me because then I can actually find out who's into this, because that has been a bit of a challenge, to be honest, trying to,
Right.
you know, find the current, you know, athletes that are still playing, you know, who's really into it, who's sort of, you know, just a side collector and maybe they just pick up a few of their own cards here and there.
Yeah.
But you mentioned Bobby Witt, and he's definitely one of the, you know, biggest collectors, not even just of his own cards, but he's got cards of, you know, Patrick Mahomes and, you know, other athletes that he likes to pick up. But
Nice.
I think it's awesome because, you know, if, just like you and me, I'm sure in a different life, we would have loved to have been professional athletes and maybe we
Yeah.
still would have been collectors. And that's, I think, what's really cool that sort of connects the people that collect cards, that see these players and knowing, you know, they're just like us, right? They're
Hmm.
just like us scrolling on their eBay watch list, you know, after a game or, you know, in the morning when they wake up after a game to see if they can pick up cards. Like that's what I've heard from a bunch of guys. You know, they're
Nice.
ripping wax in the clubhouse before a game or, you know, on the road in their hotel. Like, you know, some of these players are really, really into it. So
Yeah.
I think that's awesome. And it definitely grows the hobby. If anything, you know,
100%.
kids that see these athletes collecting the same cards makes them, you know, want to collect their cards or want to get into it. So I think it's really good for the future of sports card collecting. When it comes to, you know, trading for one of ones and cards of theirs, it's funny you brought up MJ Melendez because
Yeah.
I talked to him, you know, off camera when the
Okay.
Royals were in town the same week that I talked to Bobby Witt Jr. And I said, you know, how's the search going for the 101? He's like, yeah, I'm still working on it. I don't know if it's going to get done. He's like, I know who has it. And I guess that's one of the cards that he
Right.
was looking for. And he got the deal done. So next time the Royals come into town, I'll have to ask him about it
Nice.
and figure out how it went down. And maybe that'll be another interview on conversations about collecting. But
Yes.
you know, it's great for the fans, I think, to, you know, be able to meet their athletes and, you know, have that exchange.
Yeah.
You know, it's cool seeing the stuff that these athletes are giving them, you know, game used bats. And I think,
Hmm.
what was it, Evan Carter or Josh Young maybe gave a bat from like the World Series
Right. Right.
run. So like that's a special
It's
item. Like I
amazing.
know there's people that are saying, well, these people that have the one of ones, you know, they're getting ripped off a little bit here because maybe the value that they're
Sure.
getting in these, you know, memorabilia pieces aren't the same as, you know, if they decided to sell the card. But
Yeah.
that's not what it's about, right? Like these
Exactly.
people are
Right.
trading these cards for these items and the chances to meet these players because it's
Yeah.
priceless. You know, you
Yeah.
could, you know, sell your Evan Carter one of one for, you know, 5K, but a Kay is not going to let you meet Evan Carter and talk to
Exactly
him
right.
for 20 minutes and get a
Yeah.
bat from him. Like, this is a once in a lifetime, opportunity for these collectors. So
Hmm.
I think it's awesome, and it's cool that we're seeing a lot more of these videos because I
Yeah.
know the players, in talking to them, they really appreciate it because some of these guys really want to build out their collection of their own cards, and like I said, it's awesome for the collectors and the sports fans that get the opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. And like you're kind of mentioning, a lot of these collectors are like us. We're also fans, sports fans, and fans of these players. So it's kind of cool to see that being to have that interaction with these players. And to your point again, it really makes them feel like they're regular people when you like, oh, they have the same hobby as us. You know what I mean? Although they're professional players that get paid millions, they're similar in the sense that we both like collecting cards. So that's one takeaway that I definitely got. Yeah, and generally speaking, I love seeing more athletes become collectors, and we're talking about Bobby Witt a lot, but there's also Corbin Carroll and Mike Trout. Even he's done a couple of social media promos for PSA. So they're becoming these really great hobby ambassadors. But there are some I'm a little surprised, to be honest, to see them getting into the collecting game. Garrett Cole is one of them. I don't know if you saw that Tops clip where he's kind of talking to his Yankees teammates about some of his first Bowman Chromatos that he has, Mookie Betts, and people like that. Is there anyone? And you kind of mentioned it a little bit at the top of the interview, trying to figure out who's these collectors. But is there anyone that's kind of surprised you that, oh, this guy is into collecting or getting into collecting?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the Garrett Cole clip, and that's so funny because when the Yankees were in town, my goal was try to get at least a couple because there's,
Yeah.
I would say, maybe 4 or 5, maybe even 6 guys on that team that are card collectors, at least publicly known. Garrett Cole from that
Yeah.
video. In that same video, Tommy Kahnle is referenced.
Right. Yeah.
Nestor Cortez, of course, people know. Carlos Rodon of the Yankees, he's really into it.
Yeah.
So when the Yankees were in town, my goal was try to get a couple of those guys. Unfortunately, it didn't work out because the one thing is when I try to get these athletes, they're busy trying to get ready for a Major League Baseball game.
Right.
So the last thing that they're thinking about is talking to me about sports cards. So
Sure.
sometimes they're just politely say, sorry, I can't today. I have to get ready for the game, and I totally understand that.
Hmm.
Other times, they've just got to prepare, and it just doesn't work out timing wise.
Yeah.
And so I totally get that. But getting back to the Garrett Cole thing, it's funny you mentioned that because I didn't get an interview with him, but I was able to kind of talk to him off to the side at one point, and he mentioned, yeah, I'm getting into cards. He's like, I got a few, but he didn't come off as someone that's like Bobby Witt that's like super into it. He's
Right.
just collecting guys that he's played against and he likes, and he just wants to kind of have them. So
Sure.
again, it's sort of varying degrees, right? Some guys are like Bobby Witt, and they're all over eBay. They're all over,
Right.
going to local card stores and ripping boxes and all that stuff. And then there's guys on the other side of the spectrum where they're just picking up a few cards here and there.
Yeah.
One player that I talked to, Ke'Bryan Hayes of the Pittsburgh Pirates, when they
Yeah.
were in town. He's a collector, but I talked to him about it, and he's like, honestly, I'm not like that big of a sports card
Okay.
collector. His dad played pro ball. He's got some of his dad's cards. He's got like a few of his own cards that
Yeah.
fans mail to him or give him. But he's not like a big super collector. He's just trying to get a bunch of stuff so that he can kind of put on his mantle at home.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
that's still cool to me though. Like talking to these guys about their degrees of collecting, and I think for me, what I'm trying to do with this series is to talk to more of those guys that are really big into it.
Hmm.
So no offense to the guys that aren't as much into it. It's just I think for my following on Instagram and for people that are into the hobby, they want to hear from the guys that
Yeah.
are, like I said, super deep into it and
Yeah.
on eBay watch lists and doing all this stuff. So I've got a few more of those interviews coming soon. Hopefully,
Nice.
they're in the hopper. Yeah, it's just been cool to connect with these players, and they talk about baseball 24/7. That's their lives, and
Right.
not that they don't like talking about that, but I imagine it's a nice change of pace to talk about some of their hobbies. And for some of these guys, as I said before, it's a big part of their lives.
Yeah, for sure. And I was going to save this question for later, but I don't know if you can name any of those guys that you have lined up for your conversations about collecting series next. Is there someone that you already got or you're planning to interview?
Yeah, well, I know I teased it a while back. I just posted sort of like an Instagram story, but I got a chance to talk to Gunnar Henderson
Oh
when the
wow.
Orioles are in town. Now, he's not a card collector. He's
Okay,
actually collecting autographed jerseys of players.
gotcha.
So that video will be coming soon. But one card collector I was able to catch up with was Tristan McKenzie of Cleveland.
Yes.
And funny enough, I didn't talk to him about it in the interview, but I said to him after, are you going to the National? Because it's in Cleveland this year. He
Right.
said, yeah, gonna find some time to go out there with some friends. He's got some buddies that are really big card collectors. So
Nice.
yeah, that was a cool thing to hear as well. Because I was like, yeah, it's in Cleveland. I got to ask him about it if he's gonna go, and he said he's
Yeah.
gonna try. So sorry, Tristan, if I put your information out there and people are gonna hound you, but it's going to be tough to, not
Yeah.
tell that that's Tristan McKenzie. He's a pretty tall, lanky
Tall guy.
guy.
Yeah.
And in Cleveland, he's a pretty popular player. So,
For sure.
but again, like that's cool that these guys are going out there and hanging out with fans. I know we've seen a lot of these videos on YouTube with Mojo Sports, and he's buddies with Josh Young, and Josh Young's going to all these card shows. So, I
Yeah.
mean, these athletes they love heading out there and being a part of this hobby, and that's great to see.
Yeah, for sure. And I have my Instagram account at Five Card Guys, and I've been able to grow it to a pretty good size. And I've noticed that some current major leaguers and past major leaguers have started to follow my account.
Oh
So
wow, that's
just to
awesome.
drop some names, if you ever meet them, maybe you can approach them and say, "Hey, I heard you follow Five Card Guys." But Jose Trevino, we're talking about the Yankees. He follows my account,
Right? Yeah.
and I've noticed that every time I post like a really high end card of Aaron Judge, he always likes it. So Jose Trevino is one of those guys. Reese Hoskins also follows the account, and Evan Longoria he's getting pretty big into the collecting game as well. So just to name
Yeah.
a few, it's kind of cool to see that for sure.
Yeah, I'm glad you named Jose Trevino. I left him out when talking about the Yankees
Yeah.
guys. I didn't get a chance to talk to him, but yeah, there's Josh Young. I'm hoping to get him
Yep.
when Texas comes to town later this month. I actually have like a list of people that I'm hoping to get. I should take a look at this quickly, but just to mention some of these names.
Hmm.
Like Mike Trout, you talked about. That's sort of the white whale,
Yeah.
if you will. Like if I could get Mike Trout talking about collectibles, I think that would be
Awesome.
phenomenal.
Yeah.
Of course, Josh Young, we mentioned Evan Carter. There's a bunch of retired guys as well, and you mentioned one of them, Evan Longoria. I know Pat Neshek. Remember
Yes.
Phil Hughes, of course, was a big collector
Yep.
a few years ago. Everybody was watching Phil's polls, I think,
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
YouTube and on social media. So I think it'd be cool to get a chance to talk to him. But like I said, it's an ever growing list. It feels like more and
Yeah.
more players are getting into it, and yeah, it's been a lot of fun to sort of bring this to people and give them a bit of an insight into what these guys collect.
Absolutely, absolutely. And speaking of other players that you've interviewed already, Cole Irvin, I like that interview because for those that don't know, he's a Baltimore Orioles pitcher. I would have never suspected him of collecting hockey memorabilia. You always think baseball players will collect baseball stuff, and maybe football because most of them are American, and I understand that. But yeah, I appreciated Cole Irvin collecting hockey memorabilia. He mentioned the Austin Matthews signed jersey during your interview, so that was cool to hear. I'm wondering if there are any other interesting cards or memorabilia that you've heard other athletes collect that you might have, you know, did a double take on maybe.
That's interesting. I mean, the Cole Irvin one, I sort of had an idea that he was a big hockey fan, and
Okay.
for people that haven't seen the interview, you can check it out on my Instagram. But I have a weird random connection with Cole Irvin, and is we used to play the EA Sports NHL video game for a small amount of time back, like 7-8 years ago, and this was the first time that our paths kind of crossed. So
Wow.
I had read something recently that he was into sports memorabilia collecting, and I said, okay, if he's in town, I'm going to try to talk to him. And I told him that story that hey, we used to play, and he's like, wow, I totally remember that. And then we
Yeah.
kind of struck up a conversation. So I had an inkling that he was into hockey, but I didn't realize the depth of hockey memorabilia that he has. He's got Gordie Howe signed letter. He's got a Tyler Bertuzzi stick. Like he's a big Red
Right.
Wings fan. Because he loved the Red Wings as a kid. But when it comes to, other collectors, the Eric Swanson one, it's funny that you brought that one up before because,
Hmm.
Eric is, baseball collector, but he's also really into golf. And he was
Oh,
telling me
interesting.
about this Scotty Scheffler autograph card that he has. And I think that's cool to me too,
Yeah,
when you hear about these players collecting other sports, because you expect them to maybe collect baseball and collect some of
exactly.
their own cards. But I didn't get a chance to talk to him on camera when the Yankees were in town, but Tommy Canley was telling me about his growing sports card collection when it comes to soccer cards. He's really
Oh,
getting into
interesting.
soccer. He's
Wow.
been a massive fan
Yeah.
since, I think he said it was like the 2006 World Cup.
No way.
But he's, always looking for soccer cards and trying to pick those up. So I like those stories because I
For
love
sure.
talking baseball cards, but I like hearing, when athletes collect things that you wouldn't expect them to, and what kind of stuff they're picking up. So yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely like that aspect.
Definitely. That's what stuck out to me because you don't hear that every day. But yeah, that's really cool to hear. I got one more questions before, I like to usually end off our interview with rapid fire questions at the very end. But one more question, and it's I saw in one of your Instagram bios it says that you're a sports betting editor at Postmedia. Is that and
So I was
okay?
previously. So I'm no longer the sports betting editor at Post Media. I was a couple of years ago when I first got hired there.
Gotcha.
So I was dabbling into that, and I had a pretty good run actually. I was betting a lot of hockey, and
Okay.
I did pretty well with my picks. I don't
Nice.
do it anymore as much because I'm busy working on digital content
Yeah.
for Post Media, and partly this is why I'm able to bring these collecting videos to everyone. But yeah, sports betting was a different time in my life, and
Okay. Fair
I
enough.
still dabble every once in a while, but
Yeah. Same.
not as much as I used to.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? I only bring that up because I want to ask you more about the gambling aspect of the hobby. Okay, that's my segue into the question.
Perfect.
But like chasing hits in the breaks, bounties on big cards. Where seeing more of those kind of announcements, or just ripping, packs, hoping to hit that big chase card. Right. There's a wide range of opinions on this. With some hobbyists think, oh, it's that's ruining the hobby. All these breakers are inflating the prices. And then there's the other end where it's the only reason why they're into sports cards. They like that gambling aspect, the excitement, the entertainment value of it, thrill of the chase. What do you think about breaking and the gambling element of the hobby?
Well, look, as I said before, been collecting a long time, and you have as well. Anytime you open a box of sports cards, whether it was the 80s, 90s,
Hmm.
2000s, or even now, it's always been gambling. People have always been
Sure.
looking for certain hits. I mean,
Yeah.
there's set collectors out there, but you think back to the 80s and 90s, people were looking for people were looking for a Ken Griffey Jr. Upper Deck rookie
Hmm.
card, or
True.
people were looking for the Derek Jeter. That's always been the way it has been. The
Yeah.
unfortunate part about it now is that the prices have gone up so much. I talked
Right.
earlier about that LeBron James card that I pulled. It was in a $200 box, Canadian $200 box, which is
Right.
what, like 150 American, like
Yeah.
with the exchange rate. So nowadays though, you're buying a box of Prism, and it's just ridiculous
Yeah.
price for that. And what's the best thing that you're going to pull? You're hopefully going to get like some sort of colored rookie card.
Hmm.
Other than that, I mean, your odds are not great. And I think I don't have an issue with it. I think what needs to be done better is people need to be educated just on
Mm.
how unlikely it is that you're going to get something, because
Yeah.
it's hard for people to kind of wrap their heads around that, thinking
Hmm.
oh, I could be the one, because you're seeing all these hits online of people pulling these big one-on-one cards, or these big monster
Yeah.
5-digit a dollar amount cards in these breaks, because that's all we ever see, right? You don't see the videos of a guy opening a $5,000 box of cards and
Yeah.
getting $500 back in value. Like, that's not entertaining to anyone. People want to see the big hits, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the unfortunate reality of it. But tying it back to sort of the sports betting aspect, one thing that I think, just for me personally, I've always been good about, and it took me a while to figure it out, because I said that back in the early 2000s I opened a lot of wax, and
Hmm.
I was chasing that high. But the reason I don't do it anymore is because I know, and I realize that the odds are very low.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes with sports betting, like, oh, this could be the one bet that wins, or I
Hmm.
have a good feeling about this. You can have a good feeling about it, but you can't, use that as your sort of barometer to keep, pushing forward in this hobby with buying boxes and things like that. So, it's unfortunate to hear about people that, end up getting into debt, or spending money that they don't have to try to chase these highs in sports cards. It feels like we're hearing more and more of those stories, which is really sad and unfortunate. So for me, I don't have an issue with box breaking and breakers and all that stuff. I just wish there was better education for people to know that this, if you want to build up a collection of cards or you want to collect a certain player, opening boxes is not the way to go. If you can afford it and you're willing to take the risk, I have no problem. You can spend your money any way you want. But it's just tough to see stories coming out of, people that, get addicted. That's the best way to describe it. It's an addiction for a lot of these people. And sometimes it can go sideways.
Yeah, for sure. It's similar to gambling in a lot of ways, just how you're describing it. For me, I feel like we're in the same boat, everything in moderation. And I do want to push back on one thing, but I've been posting a lot of my box breaks recently, and I'm always losing money. So so people that see that, entertainment value in that, come to my 5 Card Guys YouTube page. You'll see how much money I lose. And I try to at least balance, that side of things. Like, hey, not most of these boxes aren't going to have big hits. This is the reality. And I kind of do it just for fun anyways. But some people generally feel sorry for me in the comments. I'm like, yeah, it's all good. I'm not spending $5,000 on a box either. It's more like $200-300. But yes, that's usually the case. And I do feel you made a good point. It does raise a lot of the cost of boxes now because of the breaking aspect of it. So even like in Canada, you go to Walmart to find a blaster, you're paying $40-45 for one. And it's hard to come by affordable, even blaster boxes, So, maybe it prices some collectors out, but hopefully, I don't know what it's going to take to kind of bring everything down towards the middle, but that's the hope.
Yeah. And I get it. Sports card companies, breakers, card stores, they got to make money. It costs them money to purchase these items and to try to make a profit off of them. So, it's just kind of the way it is. But like I said, I just wish there was better education out there for people to make just more informed decisions. That's really what it comes down to. You can take the risk, you can buy boxes, you can buy into breaks all you want, but just know that the odds are not in your favor, unfortunately, for the most part. And if that's what you're into and that's how you want to build your collection, go ahead. But there is a lot of risk that comes with it.
Well said. All right. Appreciate your time and insight and your experience that you've been able to share with us. And like I mentioned, we'll finish off with a few rapid fire questions that I like to ask at the very end. First one, I always ask the same question for each guest. What's your favorite PC card at the moment?
Ooh, that is a good one. So I'm a really big Shohei Ohtani collector.
Nice.
And if you look on my Instagram page, just got to make sure it's still up there. But I was lucky enough to purchase this card off eBay a couple of years ago. But it's a Shohei Ohtani Topps Archives 1 of 1. But it's the Stadium Club 2020 card, where it's sort of that horizontal batting stance one, and it's got his autograph on it. So that's probably my favorite card in my PC. I used to have the original 2020 card from that season with the old autograph, the old Shohei Ohtani autograph. But I moved that card out, and I was sort of unhappy about doing that. I had a regret, let's just put it that way, after I moved it. And I was like, I wish I still had this card. And then lucky enough, there was another version that popped up. So while it's not the original version from that season and it's a different autograph, it's still a 1 of 1. So nobody else has this copy in the world, and it's definitely not going anywhere anytime soon. That's for sure.
Nice. It's a great card, and that reminds me, I was interviewed for an article in PSA magazine, and the article was just about Stadium Club, why it's so underrated, and I did my best to get people to like Stadium Club, but I know that card when you're telling me about it. I visualize it.
I love Stadium Club. It's honestly my favorite product. Like you said, it's so underrated, but it's for true collectors, right? It's not for people that are looking for big monster hits.
Yeah.
Time to time, there are a few, but for the most part, it's people that love the artwork, love the photographs, and yeah, it's definitely one of my favorites. It has been since like the '90s. I remember
Yeah.
Stadium Club
Yeah.
from back then.
Very, very nostalgic, and 100% agree with you. Do you have a Grail card you're currently chasing?
Grail card that I'm currently chasing, huh? Um, I wouldn't say there's necessarily a Grail card. I mean, outside of wanting to get that Shohei Ohtani card
Right,
back
right.
that I moved out, I think that's probably up on my list. But my collecting has sort of evolved and it's changed, even from I would say a couple of years ago, where I think myself and maybe you were and a lot of other people were, we were prospecting or we
Hmm.
were sort of chasing the hot new card and maybe investing a little bit. So I was doing a bunch of that, but outside of that, now it's more about my PC.
Yeah.
So what I've been trying to collect is, players that I've gotten a chance to interview before
Nice.
in my past. So that's if you look at my Instagram, there's a lot of that. That's what the kind of cards I've been posting.
Yeah.
Um, but off the top of my head, I'm trying to think if there is a Grail card. Probably not, because it's more about just getting cards that are going to fit my PC long term. But if you're asking me to pick one, it's trying to regain that Shohei Ohtani 2020
That's a good
Stadium
one.
Club
Yeah.
auto. So if anybody out there listening to this podcast has one,
Yeah.
please reach out to me on Instagram and maybe we can work something out.
There you go. I'll link your Instagram bio in the show notes, so that's how you can reach Rob if you know where that is. All right. Being a sports editor, do you have in mind any rookies in baseball that you think is going to be a special player or just currently underrated?
Oh boy. It's so funny. I like I said before, I used to be into the prospecting and I used to think I was
Hmm.
pretty good at it, but I'm definitely not. I
Right.
mean,
It's hard.
all you have to do is just look at the success rate of prospects in baseball, and
Yeah.
so many of them just don't make it,
Yeah.
or maybe they make it for a little bit. One guy that I purchased a card of because I thought, oh man, he's going to be great forever. Unfortunately, he's Alek Manoah of the Toronto Blue
Ooh.
Jays, and
Yeah.
that's been a tough one, right? I thought this guy's going to have a great career. How could he not? He's a workhorse. He's built like a Mack truck, and
Yeah.
here he is a couple years later, and it's just been an unfortunate run for him. So maybe I'm not the person to ask about who I think is going to be a
Fair
big time
enough.
prospect. But if I'm just thinking off the top of my head, I don't see how. Oh, geez, I shouldn't have said that. Let's just say Jackson Holiday is someone that I think is
Yeah.
going to be good. I know it didn't go great for him in his first
I'm
go
with you.
around,
Yeah.
but he's just, I think really talented,
Too
and
talented. Yeah.
he's going to be on a good team. He's going to be put in a spot to succeed.
Hmm.
So that's someone that I'm going to be enjoying to enjoy watching moving forward. Am I going to buy any of his cars? No, because I'm not into prospecting. But
Yeah.
Jackson Holiday, I think, is going to be just fine.
Yeah, no, that's a good one, and I'm glad you brought up the point that prospecting is really hard in baseball, and I have a couple of the co-hosts for this podcast, and occasionally we'll do a dead wrong segment, and half of the dead wrong segment is always about the prospects that we thought were going to be great. I'm famously known to have picked up Manuel Margot back in the day. That didn't go
Wow.
anywhere. My co-host Keston Hayura, that was a tough pick, but yeah, definitely hard to do in baseball. But I'm with you on the Jackson Holiday. He's on my watch list, my eBay watch list still. So if it dips any further, I might have to pick one up. Again, because you're a sports editor covering the local scene here in Toronto, I want to ask you: are you concerned about Bo Bichette at all? And I ask selfishly because I bought a blue refractor first Bowman Chrome auto before the start of the season, and I'm wondering if I made a big mistake.
Oh boy. Um, Yeah, am I concerned about Bo Bichette? Yeah, I would be lying if I said I wasn't. It's kind of odd that a guy in his mid 20s who's, always been a strong contributor at the plate is all of a
Hmm.
sudden not able to do that. I know the offensive numbers in baseball are down around the league this year, and all you have to do is look at stats to see that there's a lot of big name players that are not having good seasons. But for a guy like him who swings at a lot of stuff and doesn't have the greatest plate discipline, when things aren't going well, this is what it looks like. So I'm not ready to count him out by any means and say this is who he's going to be for the rest of his career. I think a lot of people felt like that was the case for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. last year, and it was what's wrong with Vladdy, and is this who he's going to be? And this year he's bounced back. He's still not the guy he was in 2021, but he's a very good hitter, and I feel like at some point Bo Bichette is going to figure it out. Is he going to be a superstar that maybe people thought he was going to be 2-3 years ago? Probably not, but I think he's going to be an above average hitter like he has been for the majority of his career. He's just got to make some adjustments here to try to get back to that. So I'm not in a dissimilar boat. One of my favorite cards I have is the Bo Bichette. I think it's also 2020 Stadium Club with the CN Tower in the background. It's one of my favorite cards. Yeah, that's an awesome picture. So I have one there, but again, like I'm not holding that as an investment. I just have it because it's a cool card.
Yeah. I was hoping you would say he's a future superstar, but I might have to move him and see if I can get something for it. Thanks for that. And the last question, it's always Canadian centric. Most of our guests are American. The hobby is just bigger in America. And so I'd like to still rep Toronto. And I always make the last question more Canadian centric because we're based out of Toronto. And it's usually, who's the best all time Raptor or Blue Jays. But because you're a fellow Canadian, I want to go ask you a little bit, more deeper question than that. I've done a little bit of research. I don't know if you still host the hockey podcast, Rink Wide Toronto. Do you do that?
I used to, yeah.
You used to, yeah. So you're well versed in hockey, of course, growing up in Canada as well. So I want you to rank these 5 Canadian hockey players in order of whose card you would love to have the most. Okay, so number 1 is the card you want the most, all the way to number 5. So here are the 5 Canadian hockey players: Connor Bedard, Connor McDavid, Sidney Crosby, Wayne Gretzky, and Mario Lemieux.
All right, so Connor McDavid, Connor Bedard, Crosby, Gretzky, and Lemieux, and whose I would want the most and whose I would want not the least, but I guess it's 5th. So you know what? I'll start from the bottom.
Okay.
I'll start with Connor Bedard. I mean, just as we're talking here today, the guy has had one season where he was, solid for a rookie, but he's got a long way to go. After that, just for me personally, I loved him as a player, phenomenal career. Some would say he is the greatest player of all time from a skills standpoint. And who knows, maybe he would be had he not missed a couple of years from illness. But Mario Lemieux is probably just number 4 for me personally. After that, Connor McDavid is probably number 3. I think that might surprise a lot of people because, he's arguably, when it's all said and done, going to be the greatest offensive player in the history of the game. Like you've watched a lot of hockey. I've watched a lot of hockey. I have never seen anyone that does what he does. And he's just someone we're going to be telling our grandkids and future people about for a long, long time. But he ranks number 3 for me. I would have to go probably Wayne Gretzky number 2.
Ooh, okay.
I was around, when Wayne Gretzky was playing in the 90s, but I would say, his heyday was more in the 80s when I was, I was born in 1986, so I don't really see a lot of that. So just from my standpoint as a hockey fan, I mean, Sidney Crosby, I've watched his entire career. I remember the golden goal for Team Canada. I remember his, Stanley Cup wins. I remember what he did as a junior hockey player. Like, he is my generation's Wayne Gretzky, watching hockey. So part of that is I did have a lot of Crosby cards, when I was collecting in the early 2000s as well. So it does pain me to put him above Wayne Gretzky.
Right.
because I understand, the sort of foothold that he has in the hockey card community. It sounds kind of blasphemous to, hear I'm putting Crosby, but if you're talking about, whose card I would like to own
Yeah.
above Gretzky, I've thought about it in the past of, hey, maybe I want a Wayne Gretzky rookie card, because
Yeah.
that's kind of what every hockey collector, says they want to have as part of
Yeah.
their PC. But for me, Crosby, just I was more, I guess, sort of attentive to his career more so than I was to a Gretzky or a Lemieux. And, maybe I'll change my answer when Connor McDavid wins that first Stanley Cup, and I'll say,
Right.
oh man, I should have said Connor McDavid instead. But Sidney Crosby, definitely number one on my list out of those five.
Yeah, you know what? My co-host John will probably agree with you. Sidney Crosby, he's always looking for a good price for that future watch auto of Sidney Crosby, and I think it's pretty stable now at a certain price. So I'm sure you're not the only one that would put Crosby first. For me personally, I would flip Crosby and McDavid because just the potential of McDavid so amazing. Like, yeah, at the end of the day, like you said, he's going to break a lot of records when his career is done. Granted, he stays healthy. Yeah. Rob, again, just appreciative of your time and all the stories that you're able to share with us, and just the connection with the connections that you have. And yeah, hopefully, we're in the same city, so hopefully we get to connect and talk more about collecting in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. We got to hit up the expo is coming in November, so maybe we'll get a
Yeah,
chance to see each other there and catch up. And yeah, hopefully we can do this again and talk about some more stories and
absolutely.
conversations about collecting. As I try to filter more of these out. Like I said, I'm trying to get more of these baseball players as they come into town. Mike Trout and the Angels, I think, are coming. So we'll see. I might
Fingers
have to go to
crossed
every
for you.
single game and
Yeah.
bug him to see if he'll talk to me. But yeah, just keep tuned to my Instagram channel, and we'll see what else we can drum up as the rest of the season goes.
Yep. Awesome. Again, conversations about collecting. You could find it on his Instagram Reels at Rob Wong Collects. I'll link it in the show notes below so you can find it easily. All right. Thanks, Rob.